It began not with a bang, but with a spinning circle on a billion screens. In the early hours of a Tuesday in 2026, the digital pulse of the planet suddenly skipped a beat. In London, high-frequency trading algorithms, the invisible engines of the global economy, stalled as latency spiked. In Mumbai, the massive IT hubs that power the world's back offices went dark. In Dubai, logistics systems controlling one of the busiest ports on Earth began to glitch. At first, the world thought it was a sophisticated cyber attack or a massive glitch in the cloud. But the truth was far more physical and far more primitive. 7 miles beneath the surface of the Red Sea, in the crushing silence of the abyss, a series of hair-thin glass fibers had been violently severed. Welcome to Trench Waters. Today, we are diving into the most critical vulnerability of the 21st century. We've been conditioned to believe that the internet is in the sky, a celestial cloud of satellites and wireless signals. But the reality is that 99% of all global data travels through a series of fragile, garden hose-thick tubes resting on the ocean floor. And right now, the most vital of these arteries, the Red Sea corridor, is under attack. The Red Sea is the aorta of the global internet. It is a narrow 1,200-mile-long stretch of water that acts as the primary data bridge between the East and the West. Almost every email, bank transfer, and secret government communication sent between Europe, Africa, and Asia must pass through this single maritime needle's eye. When 3 of these critical cables, the AAE-1, SEACOM, and EIG, were cut in a single window of time, the global economy lost 25% of its traffic in an instant. But this wasn't just an accident. This was a demonstration of a new kind of hybrid warfare. In the logic of traditional war, generals looked to mountain passes and narrow straits to stop an army. In the digital age, an adversary doesn't need a fleet of fighter jets to paralyze a nation. They only need a simple underwater tool and the knowledge of where our invisible arteries are buried. As we pull back the curtain on the Red Sea blackout, we are investigating a world where geography has become a weapon. We will explore the specialized shadow fleets designed to sabotage our infrastructure, the terrifying economic fallout of a disconnected continent, and the high-tech race to repair the world's most dangerous digital choke point. We live in an era of space exploration and AI, yet our entire civilization is tethered to the seafloor by threads of glass. And as you're about to see, those threads are being cut. To understand why the Red Sea is so vulnerable, we must first look at the map through the eyes of a data engineer. While the ocean is vast, the routes our information takes are surprisingly restricted. The Red Sea isn't just a body of water, it is a geographic funnel. At its southern tip lies the Bab-el-Mandeb Strait, the Gate of Tears. This passage is a mere 20 miles wide, squeezed between Yemen on the Arabian Peninsula and Djibouti in the Horn of Africa. Nearly every bit of data flowing between the financial hubs of London and the tech corridors of Singapore must pass through this tiny needle's eye. Currently, in 2026, over 16 major submarine cable systems are packed into this narrow corridor. If you were to look at the seabed here, it would look like a massive, tangled nervous system with hundreds of billions of dollars worth of infrastructure resting in a space no wider than a mid-sized city. But the danger isn't just the width, it is the depth. In the open Atlantic or Pacific, submarine cables rest in the abyssal plain, miles beneath the surface where they are safe from human interference. However, the Red Sea is relatively shallow. In many parts of the Bab-el-Mandeb, the water is only a few hundred feet deep. This creates a technical nightmare for cable operators. Because the seabed here is often rocky or composed of hard coral, these cables cannot be plowed or buried deep into the crust. Instead, they lie exposed on the surface of the seabed, vulnerable to the currents, the wildlife, and most importantly, human activity. In the world of maritime law, this area is a high-risk area. Thousands of massive container ships and oil tankers pass through this strait every month. Each one of these ships carries a multi-ton anchor.
If a ship loses power or is forced to drop anchor in an emergency, it becomes a literal wrecking ball for the global internet. A dragging anchor can snag a cable and snap it like a twig, causing an instant blackout for entire regions. But as we enter 2026, the threat has evolved beyond accidental snags. The shallow nature of the Red Sea means that you don't need a multi-million-dollar submarine to reach these cables. A simple commercial diving team or even a modified fishing boat with a basic grapnel hook can reach the world's most sensitive data lines. This accessibility has turned the Red Sea into a playground for non-state actors and regional powers looking for leverage. For an adversary, the Bab-el-Mandeb is the ultimate target. You don't need to hack a firewall or break an encryption code if you can simply break the physical medium the data travels on. By cutting just 4 or 5 specific cables in this shallow strait, an attacker can effectively delete the digital presence of East Africa and paralyze the communication lines between the Mediterranean and the Indian Ocean. This is the reality of geography as a weapon. The 21st century's most advanced technology is held hostage by 150-year-old maritime geography. As we will see in the next chapter, when the cables were finally cut in 2024 and 2025, the forensics revealed that these weren't the jagged, messy breaks of a stray anchor. They were something much more surgical, something much more sinister. When the AAE-1, CCOM, and EIG cables went dark in early 2024, the maritime world immediately looked for a scapegoat. The initial reports were quick to blame the Rubimar, a bolt carrier that had been abandoned after a missile strike and was drifting with its anchor deployed. It was a convenient explanation, a tragic accident of war. But as forensic repair teams arrived on the scene in 2025 and 2026, the physical evidence began to tell a different, much more haunting story. To understand the forensics of the deep, you have to understand what happens when a submarine cable breaks. In a natural disaster or a stray anchor incident, the cable is usually dragged and stretched. The protective layers of high-tensile steel wire are frayed, pulled apart by thousands of pounds of tension until they snap. This creates a jagged break, a messy explosion of glass and metal that is easily identified by the remotely operated vehicles or ROVs sent down to inspect the damage. But that isn't what the repair crews found in the Red Sea. Instead, high-resolution sonar and 8K ROV cameras revealed what investigators call clean cuts. These are surgical, precise bisections of the cable. In some cases, the signature of the cut suggested the use of hydraulic shears, tools specifically designed to slice through steel and glass with a single powerful motion. In others, the edges of the cable showed signs of thermal cutting, intense heat used to melt through the petroleum jelly and copper layers in seconds. This isn't what a dragging anchor does. This is the signature of a deliberate, calculated operation. The timing was equally suspicious. The 3 cables weren't just cut in the same region, they were cut in a synchronized window of time that suggests a coordinated attack. For a single drifting anchor to hit 3 separate cable systems, which are often spaced hundreds of meters or even kilometers apart, would be a statistical impossibility. It would be like a blindfolded man throwing 3 needles and hitting 3 bullseyes in a row. So how is a modern fiber optic cable sabotaged in total silence? The process is terrifyingly simple for a prepared adversary. Using a shadow vessel, a civilian ship secretly equipped with deep-sea sonar, attackers can locate the exact coordinates of a cable. Once over the target, they deploy a grapnel, or a small unmanned underwater drone. At depths of 200 to 500 meters, this drone can identify the cable and apply a cutting tool. Within seconds, the data lane connecting Europe to Asia is severed, and the drone is retracted before any naval patrol can reach the scene. This is the beauty and the horror of plausible deniability. Because these cables are on the ocean floor, in international waters, there are no witnesses, no security cameras, no fingerprints. By the time a repair ship arrives weeks later, the ocean currents have washed away any debris, leaving behind only the cold, silent proof of a clean cut. In the intelligence circles of 2026, this is being called the Great Underwater Blindness. We have built a world where we can track a cell phone to a few meters on land, but we are virtually blind to what is happening to our most critical infrastructure on the seabed. As we will see in the next chapter, the impact of these clean cuts wasn't just a slower internet, it was a violent shock to the global financial system that almost brought the markets to their knees.
When the Red Sea cables were severed, the first casualties weren't people, they were algorithms. To the average user, a cable cut might mean a video takes longer to buffer, or a website fails to load. But in the hyper-connected economy of 2026, where every millisecond is worth millions of dollars, a 100-millisecond delay is a catastrophic failure. This is the economic domino effect, and it began in the high-frequency trading pits of London and Mumbai. To understand the chaos, we have to talk about latency. This is the time it takes for a data packet to travel from point A to point B. In the world of global banking, light traveling through a fiber optic cable is the ultimate speed limit. Most financial institutions rely on the direct, shortest path routes through the Red Sea because they offer the lowest latency between European and Asian markets. The moment those cables were cut, the data was forced to find a detour. Think of it like a 10-lane highway suddenly being closed, forcing all traffic onto a winding, one-lane dirt road. The data that used to travel in 60 milliseconds was suddenly rerouted, either through the fragile terrestrial lines across Central Asia, or more commonly, thousands of miles around the southern tip of Africa via the Cape of Good Hope. This detour added nearly 150 milliseconds to every transaction. In the world of 2026 high-frequency trading, or HFT, this delay is an eternity. HFT computers are programmed to execute thousands of trades per second based on real-time price fluctuations. When the latency spike hit, these systems were suddenly operating on old data. They were flying blind. Within minutes, flash crashes began to ripple through the Bombay Stock Exchange and the London Stock Exchange. Trillions of dollars in digital liquidity vanished as automated systems hit their kill switches to prevent further losses. But the damage extended far beyond the stock market. We live in the era of the just-in-time global supply chain. In Dubai and Singapore, logistics giants depend on cloud-based AI to manage the movement of millions of shipping containers. When the connection to their primary data centers in Europe slowed down, the synchronization failed. Cargo ships were left idling outside ports, unable to offload because their digital manifests couldn't be verified. Perishable goods rotted in the sun, and the cost of global shipping skyrocketed overnight. In Mumbai, the back office of the world faced its greatest crisis. The thousands of IT and customer service firms that handle everything from American medical records to European banking security found their cloud-based life support inaccessible. When the Red Sea goes dark, the global digital labor force is effectively paralyzed. Economists at the World Bank estimated that the 2024-2025 Red Sea outages cost the global economy over $2 billion for every day the cables remained unrepaired. This isn't just a technical glitch, it is a massive, invisible tax on human progress. For a developing nation in East Africa, a single cable cut can erase a year of GDP growth in a week. The terrifying reality of 2026 is that our economic stability is built on a foundation of glass and light. We have created a global brain, but we have left the spinal cord exposed in one of the most volatile regions on Earth.
And as the market spiraled into a violent freefall, a new question emerged. Who was responsible for this economic carnage? The answer lay with the mysterious shadow fleets hovering over the seabed. In the traditional landscape of 20th century warfare, an attack on a nation's vital infrastructure was heralded by the roar of jet engines or the launch of ballistic missiles. But in the 2026 era of hybrid warfare, the most devastating blows are delivered in total silence by vessels that don't even appear on a military radar. This is the rise of the Shadow Fleet, a collection of civilian-looking ships that have become the primary weapons in a war most people don't even know is being fought. What exactly is a shadow fleet? Imagine a rusty commercial trawler, a nondescript research vessel, or a weathered oil tanker flying a flag of convenience from a neutral nation like Panama or Liberia. To a coastal patrol or a satellite, these ships look like part of the mundane background noise of global trade. But beneath the waterline, these vessels are equipped with technology that rivals the world's elite navies. Intelligence agencies have tracked a growing number of these ships, funded by regional superpowers and non-state actors that are fitted with side-scan sonar and specialized moon pools. A moon pool is a hidden opening in the floor of the ship that allows divers or remotely operated vehicles, ROVs, to be launched directly into the ocean without being seen from the surface. In the shallow waters of the Red Sea, these shadow ships can loiter over a cable route for days, disguised as a vessel experiencing engine trouble, while their ROVs are busy 300 meters below, identifying and severing the glass arteries of the internet. This is the ultimate evolution of deniable operations. If a destroyer fires a missile, the world knows who to blame. But if a civilian-flagged fishing boat accidentally drags a heavy-duty grapnel over a cable landing zone, it is legally and diplomatically difficult to prove intent. In the 2024-2025 Red Sea incidents, several research vessels were identified loitering over the exact coordinates of the SEACOM and AAE-1 cables just hours before the outages. When questioned, the operators claimed they were conducting marine biology studies. There were no missiles, no uniforms, and no declarations of war, just a sudden, violent drop in global connectivity. Why use this method? Because in 2026, data is more valuable than territory. By deploying a shadow fleet, an adversary can paralyze a rival's economy, disrupt their military communications, and sow chaos among their population, all while maintaining the veneer of an accident. It is the low-cost, high-impact strategy that targets the single most vulnerable point of modern civilization, its physical connectivity. But the shadow fleet isn't just about cutting, it's about tapping. Some intelligence reports suggest that these vessels are being used to install sophisticated acoustic taps on the ocean floor. By bending a fiber optic cable just enough to cause a light leak, these devices can capture the pulses of data, the bank transfers, the emails, the diplomatic cables, and transmit them back to a parent ship. We are witnessing the birth of a silent underwater battlefield where the prize is every secret on Earth. As the Red Sea becomes a graveyard for severed cables, the international community faces a terrifying realization. Our multi-billion-dollar aircraft carriers and stealth fighters are useless against a $50,000 underwater drone launched from the back of a fishing boat. The front lines of the next great conflict aren't in the trenches of a foreign land. They are on the silent, crushing floor of the ocean. And as we will see in the next chapter, the race to fix what has been broken is a high-stakes mission that takes place in the middle of a literal war zone.
When a continent loses its digital lifeline, the world doesn't wait for peace treaties. The pressure to restore connectivity is immediate and immense.
But repairing a submarine cable isn't like calling a technician to fix your home internet. It is one of the most complex and dangerous engineering feats in the world, a high-stakes mission that requires highly specialized vessels known as cable ships. Enter the CS Reliance, one of the workhorses of the global repair fleet. These ships are essentially floating factories and hospitals for fiber optics. The repair process is a race against time and a battle against the elements. First, the repair crew must navigate into a potentially active war zone like the Red Sea, often requiring military escorts just to reach the repair coordinates. Once on location, the crew uses specialized sonar to locate the exact breakpoint. Next, massive, heavy-duty grapnel hooks are deployed. These anchors are designed not to snag cargo, but to hook the broken cable ends and drag them to the surface. It is a slow, tedious process that can take days in choppy waters. Once the ends are on board the ship, the real science begins. In a climate-controlled splicing room, a sterile environment where even a single speck of dust can ruin a connection, engineers perform microsurgery. They must fuse the hair-thin glass fibers back together using a high-tech fusion splicer that uses an electric arc to melt the glass ends, creating a single seamless data pathway. This process must be repeated for every single fiber pair within the cable. But the difficulty is compounded by the environment of the Red Sea in 2026. The conflict in the region meant that the CS Reliance was operating under constant threat. In the 2024-2025 Blackout incidents, repair ships themselves became targets. Houthi rebels and other regional actors used anti-ship missiles and drone boats to harass the crews, viewing anyone near the cables as an enemy operative. The engineers working in that splicing room were quite literally working on the front lines of an invisible war. The cost of this operation is staggering. A single day of running a fully crewed cable ship costs millions of dollars. Add to that the cost of replacement cable, military protection, and the opportunity cost of global economic disruption, and you realize why a single cable cut results in billions of dollars in losses. The companies operating these lines are often forced to take out specialized war risk insurance just to operate in regions like the Red Sea. When the cables in the Red Sea were finally restored weeks later, the world breathed a sigh of digital relief. But the incident exposed a profound fragility in our civilization. It proved that a small group of people using rudimentary tools in a strategic location could disrupt global commerce with surgical precision. The Band-Aid had been applied, but the wound remained open, forcing the world's biggest tech giants to rethink the entire architecture of the global internet. The future of connectivity would no longer be left to chance. The 2024 and 2025 Red Sea blackouts didn't just change how we protect cables, they changed who owns the very foundation of our digital world. Traditionally, submarine cables were built and managed by consortiums of state-backed telecommunications companies, entities like AT&T, British Telecom, or France Telecom. These were public utilities, subject to international law and government oversight. But as we move through 2026, a tectonic shift has occurred. The titans of Silicon Valley, Google, Meta, Microsoft, and Amazon have effectively taken over the seabed. Today, these hyperscalers are the primary investors in almost every major new undersea project. Google alone has invested in at least 15 different cable systems globally. Why? Because for these giants, the internet is no longer just a service they use. It is the infrastructure they must own to survive. By owning the cables, they eliminate the middleman, reduce their latency to near zero, and, most importantly, they gain unprecedented control over the security of their data. The Red Sea crisis acted as a catalyst for a project that was once considered diplomatically impossible: the Blue Raman cable system. This is a multi-billion-dollar project led by Google that seeks to solve the Red Sea problem by bypassing the volatile waters of the Bab-el-Mandeb entirely. Instead of traveling through the Suez Canal and the Red Sea, the Blue Ramen route takes a historic detour, traveling across the Mediterranean, through Israel, and then overland through Jordan and Saudi Arabia before diving back into the Indian Ocean. This isn't just an engineering feat, it is a geopolitical earthquake. It represents a digital Silk Road that connects the West to the East via land routes that are easier to monitor and protect than the silent, murky floor of the ocean. For the first time in history, the path of global data is being dictated not by geography or government treaties, but by the strategic needs of private corporations. But this concentration of power creates a new kind of risk. When a single company, like Meta or Google, owns the primary data artery between two continents, they hold the power of digital sovereignty. They can prioritize their own traffic, monitor the data flow of entire nations, and potentially unplug a region if it suits their corporate interests. In the 2026 landscape, the line between a tech company and a sovereign state has blurred. We are entering an era where the cloud is not a public square, but a private fortress. Furthermore, this private infrastructure has made the seabed a primary target for corporate espionage. Intelligence agencies are no longer just looking at what governments are doing. They're tracking the underwater movements of private cable-laying ships. There was a growing fear that as these tech giants build more private routes, they are inadvertently creating a roadmap for future sabotage. If an adversary knows exactly which cable carries the most vital financial data for a specific tech giant, they can strike with even greater precision. The Red Sea blackout proved that the old world of state-controlled cables was too slow and too vulnerable. But the new world of corporate-owned digital arteries brings its own set of terrifying questions. We are trading public vulnerability for private control. As we move to our final chapter, we must ask, in a world where the internet can be cut by a single anchor or a secret drone, can we ever truly be safe in the digital age? The Red Sea blackout was a warning shot across the bow of 21st century civilization. It was a brutal reminder that for all our talk of artificial intelligence, space colonization, and a borderless digital world, we are still fundamentally anchored to the Earth, specifically to the silent, crushing floor of the ocean. In a single 24-hour window, the myth of the intangible cloud was shattered, replaced by the cold reality of severed glass and paralyzed economies. As we look ahead into the remainder of 2026 and beyond, the battle for the seabed is only intensifying. The Red Sea remains a digital powder keg, a place where geography, ancient geopolitics, and futuristic hybrid warfare collide. We have entered an era where a single ship, equipped with a simple underwater tool, can achieve more destruction than a fleet of fighter jets. The invisible war is no longer a theoretical scenario discussed in think tanks. It is a documented reality that dictates the pulse of our global existence. We are currently witnessing a desperate race. On one side, tech giants and nations are scrambling to build more resilient, redundant routes, trying to weave a digital web that is too complex to break. On the other side, adversaries are developing more sophisticated ways to navigate the abyss, looking for the single point of failure that could bring a superpower to its knees. The question we must ask ourselves is not whether the cables will be cut again, but how we will respond when they are. Our dependency on these invisible arteries is absolute. Every bank transfer, every emergency call, and every piece of information that makes your modern life possible is currently resting on a series of fragile tubes no thicker than a garden hose, miles beneath the waves. We have built our greatest triumph on the most hostile and unprotectable terrain on Earth. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the deep. This has been a Trenchwaters special investigation into the Red Sea blackout. If you found this deep dive into the hidden vulnerabilities of our world compelling, please show your support. Every like, share, and subscription helps us continue our mission to shine a light into the darkest and most dangerous corners of our planet. Join us in the comments and let us know. In an age of hybrid warfare, do you think the global internet can ever truly be secured? Or are we simply waiting for the next cut to plunge us into a new digital dark age? Stay curious, stay vigilant, and remember, the most dangerous secrets are always the ones lurking in the deep. This has been Trenchwaters signing off.